Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's discussion about legal tech conferences organized by Law Forma and Cosmonauts. My name is Mariam, and I'm one of the founders at Law Forma, a legal tech platform designed to simplify the contract drafting process for legal professionals. The goal of today's discussion is to showcase the value and benefits that legal tech conferences offer to legal professionals, including those from law firms, solo practitioners, in-house teams, and legal entrepreneurs, and also to provide you with effective strategies and insider tips for maximizing your experience at these events. So for the first 40 minutes of this webinar will be dedicated to the panel discussion, and we will save the last 10 to 15 minutes for the Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments, please type them in the chat below. Before we move on to the actual discussion, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to introduce our panelists. We have with us today David Fliger, partner at Paradigm Counsel LLP, a Silicon Valley boutique law firm that works primarily with technology startups and emerging growth companies. We also have Timo Karakashev, CEO at Cosmonauts, advising tech startups in the UK and in Europe on business development and fundraising strategies. Marie Whitmer, co-founder and CEO at Level 7 Legal, helping lawyers through software implementation, process design, and change management. And we have Samriti Jain, founder at Legal Technology Marketing, working with legal technology companies, law firms, and legal professionals from over 7 countries. Welcome, and thank you so much to all of you for joining the discussion today. So to start with, I'd like to mention that this month we have some of the biggest legal tech events happening, including Legal Innovators California next week and Legal Geek North America later, down the around 29th of June. And on the panel today, we have Timo, who is the leader of the organizing group at this year's Legal Innovators California. So to start with, maybe Timo, you can perhaps provide us with an overview of what we can expect from Legal Innovators California this year, in terms of the event structure, overall experience, and why anyone should consider participating. We have quite a few people attending today's webinar, so this is your opportunity to convince them to join us next week. So please, over to you. Timo,
to unmute myself. Here you go. Yes, sorry about that.
So we had to do that.
I hate webinars, by the way. That's why we organize conferences. But for our gracious colleagues from Law Forma, we've agreed to participate in this one because we found it to be quite special, especially considering that we'll also use it for self-promotion for the event that's coming up next week. I'm actually quite pleased to see that pretty much everyone that sits alongside me on that webinar will be with us next week. Conferences and events in general are a great platform for anyone that sits in a particular industry, whether you're out there looking for the next best solution to assist with your legal practice, or whether you're an entrepreneur, a legal tech provider, looking to find partners that you can work with, support, and service. Conferences are still one of the best ways to form those partnerships from a buyer or a seller perspective when it comes to technology or any other sophisticated service in the industry. Really for a few very, very simple reasons. One is that everyone that's there want to ensure that they work with people that they get on with, that they can see them as real professional partners, and want to ensure that they share similar view on the way that the profession should be essentially improved and practiced. So conference is a great way for people to get together and explore those potential future collaborations. And then, of course, they're a great way for you to check what's new and keep yourself up to date with what's topical and who is who in the sector. There are loads of events out there. We're a small fish in a large pond. You know, they're large events, they're small events, they're good events, they're shit events. You know, they're all sorts. It's usually, as with everything else in life, you get what you pay for. There are a few big events that I would say that are for everyone not to miss. Events like Clock and Legal Week. Really, if you have the money, sponsor, exhibit. But if you don't, just make sure you are there and make sure that you attend. Of course, there are other what I call contenders / mid-market events. That's where I would place legal innovators. That's where I would place legal geek. I would say those are from my view must events to try to participate to, because they usually don't cost an arm and a leg in comparison to some of the large events. But you see and you meet most people that you'd like to meet. When it comes to conferences, make sure that you don't just go there to meet new people. I think that meeting new people should be about 30% of your objective. 70% of your objective is really to reignite and reconnect with people that you've already been in some form of discussion with. You know, when it comes to conferences and everything business development and commercialization, it's about the number of meaningful touch points in the shortest possible period of time. So if you are able to introduce more touch points by attending conferences, by all means go. And then last but not least, you know, events are there to be enjoyed. We're human beings. We like to be together. We like to be with like-minded people. We like good food. We like a drink. So you know, it's a nice escape of the usual day-to-day routine. People just enjoy conferences, so they go to them for that reason. As for next week, it's a 2-day event. As I said, it's a boutique event. You expect between 200 and 250 people per day. Day one is our law firm day. We'll be talking about innovation, not just tech, but just general innovation of practicing law within private practice. And then day two is a day focused on professionals in-house legal teams of corporates. So most of the solutions that will be there on each given day will be geared to either of those two groups. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you there. It's an event that will take place on top of Westfield, Central San Francisco, on the 7th and 8th of June. Law Former are our gracious drink sponsor, which we thank them for, and we'll take them again on Thursday evening. And then I believe that the rest of our participants will be there with us as well on those 2 days. So I look forward to meeting you all. You're muted, Mariam.
Of course. Thank you so much, Timo, for providing sort of like a holistic overview of all the benefits that we could tap into, and also for joining our webinar today, despite your very clear feelings about webinars. We also prefer in-person conferences, to be honest, and that's why we're coming to Legal Innovators California. So we're excited to see you next week. And you know, Timo mentioned a few very obvious benefits of legal tech conference and events like that, but among other things, legal tech conferences provide an excellent platform, for obtaining firsthand information about emerging technology trends and about what's happening within the industry. And my next question would be, for David, considering your experience working with technology startups and emerging growth companies, I was wondering if you have found such events, such conferences useful for exploring potential legal tech products that could benefit your law firm and could be of interest for your clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have experimented with document automation and machine learning assisted proofreading and other similar tools. And many years ago, I was an in-house attorney as well, and I always wanted tools like the ones that are emerging now, including some of the contract lifecycle management tools that are out there. And I've been really impressed when I've gone to conferences and spoken to legal tech entrepreneurs about just how much thought is going into it, and I've demoed products that I only learned about from those conferences. I've recommended my firm subscribe to certain SaaS products and even mention them to some of my clients. So yeah, that, and even some of the new thought or innovative thought around standard agreements. I know Todd Smithline and the team at Bond Terms have been were there last year and are planning to go this year. I sit on one of their committees helping to draft standard agreements, and I think the thinking around that is innovative too, and interesting. And so the last thing I'd say is maybe I'll just add the hallway conversations with other people about what they're seeing or what they're adopting are part of the reason to go, because that even if you miss something at the exhibit floor or in the conference, you might pick up something from other attendees. So those are some of the reasons I like to attend this type of conference, especially Legal Innovators.
Absolutely, I agree with you, David. And I think there is going to be a lot of interesting innovation exhibited at this year's Legal Innovators California, because there was a lot of interesting innovation that took place, especially with Gen AI, but not only. I'm looking forward to see all of the innovation that's taking place in legal tech. So that's a perfect way to look at it, I think. And I think also like legal tech conferences can be relevant to, legal professionals from different backgrounds, not just specifically those working in legal tech, right? And I think, Marie, you are in a somewhat unique position as someone, involved and working as legal ops and also being an entrepreneur, founder of a legal startup. So I was thinking attending these type of events can, offer various benefits for you and a lot of value as well. So maybe you could elaborate on some of the distinct advantages that you are looking forward to explore at this year at Legal Innovators, and not only later at Legal Geek as well. And what do you think is the most effective way to do that?
Yeah, thank you. I kind of get a dual benefit from events right now. So as someone who's still implementing legal technology in-house at HubSpot, I have the opportunity to connect with vendors and see what's coming out on the market, what new features, what other in-house leaders are concerned about. So I can kind of circumvent some mistakes from happening, as well as maybe bring some new technology to my team. I love going to conferences and bringing back, making presentations for my in-house team and kind of showing everybody what's out there and on the market and getting them excited. And then as a vendor, working in a legal startup, also I have the chance to network and just hear on the ground. Selfishly, I get to absorb some information about the pain points people are experiencing, and then that can help me start to think about how do we tailor our solutions and make sure we're actually bringing something to the table that people want to buy and that they actually need and will improve their lives, versus just trying to sell something that I think is important to everybody else. And in terms of what is valuable to me at conferences, I agree with Timo that there's a healthy balance. You will meet new people. It is a chance for me to connect with people I'm already close with. Sometimes the only time I see some of my networking friends are at these events, maybe once or twice a year. And then the third benefit for me is speaker sessions. I'm also really big on side events. So a lot of the closest connections you make at conferences are the conversations that happen on the side, or the little breaks you take in between content to connect with each other. And sometimes even the chats that happen leading up to the event can kind of form some connections. So that's a lot of benefit.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about the side events in a bit, but before we do, I wanted to highlight one thing you mentioned, which resonated with me. These conferences are such a wonderful opportunity to get really valuable feedback on your product. even if you're not necessarily fundraising, but to get like some, really valuable comments and honest feedback on your product can have so much more value at that point for an entrepreneur. And so definitely something that should be further explored, I think. And thank you for highlighting all of these benefits. Now I wanted to focus a little bit on the marketing side of things, which is also one big benefit of these type of events. And I wanted to ask Samriti, as the founder of Legal Technology Marketing and as a legal copywriter, doing this for the past 2 years or over 2 years, you've been assisting legal professionals in effectively promoting themselves, and not just themselves, their products as well. And in light of this experience, could you share your insights on the advantages of these conferences for marketing and self-branding, and whether legal professionals today are fully capitalizing on them in the manner they should be? Let us know your thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miriam. And to start off, I'd like to say that, I work with a lot of legal tech companies, a lot of law firms, and none of them associated marketing with their profession, right? They said that marketing is something that we don't like doing, but ultimately you have to do marketing in order to get business, right? And a lot of people actually start with the mindset that they're ashamed of marketing themselves, which is a wrong place to start, right? Because if you don't market yourself, no one else is going to do it for you. And that's something that I always tell a lot of people. They say that, they don't have the time, but I say that that's not the problem. The problem is you thinking that marketing is going to make you look like, you're not an authority or you don't have business. That's not how, because people will not know about you unless you tell them, right? So I think conferences are a great way to do that, because a lot of conferences are in general known for by the book networking, or, you just go in there and talk about, what do you do? What do I do? Right. But you could be super unique in the way you approach meeting the people you already know and meeting new people as well. Right. So the way you show up at a particular conference is your marketing. And not a lot of people understand that, right? And having a unique strategy is important, because when you're in a conference, people are getting to know the kind of person you are. Are you someone who's interesting? Are you someone who's kind? Are you someone who's curious about things, right? So it's very important that you show the values that you have through your networking style. So because you could be attending sessions, you could be making random notes, and you can just be striking conversation with random people you bump into. But if you've already made a list of people that you want to meet, list of questions that you have for the people that you want to meet, actually take notes and then follow up with speakers after a particular session has happened. That would make it more fruitful in terms of, you getting the output of an event, right? And these are events that don't happen like all the time, right? You don't get to meet people all the time. So it's a great opportunity to do that. And when it comes to capitalizing, and if people are capitalizing on it, I'd say I'm not sure about that. But what I can say is that people can certainly do better, because it doesn't take a lot to stand out, because not a lot of people are doing it. So you just have to have a fun approach to what you do. And just to take an example, if you're someone who's curious, right? Because I'm someone, if I find something interesting, and I'll go dig up the internet about it, right? So if you're curious, then you should maybe write down a list of questions that you have for particular speakers at the event, right? And then go approach them, ask them about those questions, so they know that you're a curious person. So that's how you sort of exhibit personality there.
Thank you, Samriti. These are really interesting points. And I think I agree on you with what you said about marketing and how people have, skepticism towards marketing and misconceptions. And I think that's starting to go away a little bit. And also what you mentioned about being curious, and it doesn't take a lot to stand out. It's sometimes all it takes is being present and being interested in something and engaging and asking meaningful questions, not for the sake of asking questions, but also to show that you're interested in something. It really helps develop meaningful relationships and start working on projects and partnerships together, because as long as you show someone what you're really interested in, if they have something coming up later down the line that they know that you're interested in something like that, they might reach out to you, and that really starts the process. So thank you for highlighting these points. I just wanted to go back to Timo now and discuss like a wider conference strategy. With this type of event, I always feel like there's so much happening. It's a 2-day event, and there's so many sessions and exhibition floors and etc. So what would be your advice to someone who's just attending such conference for the first time? How do they make sure they attend the relevant session, engage with the right people, and make the best of the conference floor? So what would be your advice for them?
So the format that we're running next week is perhaps one of the most straightforward formats there are to navigate around. It's a single stream. People are either in session or people are networking during breakfast, lunch, coffee breaks, and then drink reception. So depending on who and for what you are there, I would always say make sure that you attend all the panel sessions, make sure that you attend all the talks, because those are the cornerstones of discussion throughout the 2 days. So if you want to take an active part in the conference, if you want to participate in the networking break, in some of the conversations in a more meaningful manner, have an opinion, express interest, be there, be present. Don't just be there to take advantage of the networking in the most shallow way possible. The only way that you can really connect with people in a meaningful manner is that you pick interest in the industry that you are participating. And I think that for fellow salespeople out there, like myself, that can be sometimes a bit of a challenge, because let's be honest, 99% of salespeople, they're good at selling, but they really don't really care about the product that they're selling. They're there to make a buck. But the really good ones, they take an active part. They take a genuine interest on how they can improve people's lives through the tool that they've got to offer, and they're there for the greater good and the greater improvement in the industry. And I know that it may all sound quite fairy, but if you're there with the right intentions and the right reasons, you inevitably do well, not just out of this particular conference, but out of your participation in the industry as a general. It's a small event in comparison to many other events, so you have no trouble engaging people on a meaningful way. You'll be able to have a genuine conversation. And I would say that having the opportunity to speak with 15-20 people and walking away with 15-20 meaningful conversations, which you can feasibly continue after the event, adds a lot of value. The one problem that I have with very, very large events is that you're one among many, many other people doing the exact same thing. And, I let you in a secret. You're no better in any way. You do the same thing. You've got the same product. You are able to service people's needs just as well as everyone else. There are only a handful of exceptions there that can genuinely say, there's no one else that does what we do. But most people, they do exactly the same thing, and they just do it just as well. So your advantage is that you have to be able to get along with the people that you'll be working with, because people want to work with people they like. And certain people vibe with certain people. So your task is find those people on the floor, find the people that will genuinely enjoy working with you, because when they genuinely enjoy that activity, they will put an effort to make use of what you've got to offer. Far too many solutions go unutilized. Over 90% of legal tech digitization projects fail within 2.5 years. And that's why you see a lot of churn in the sector. And the reason for that is most people don't care. They buy something, they don't use it. But if you are able to connect with people in a meaningful manner, you're far more likely to implement what you've got. And I think that Marie here can actually speak of that in greater detail, because their level 7 project is quite cool, and I think it's addressing that very issue in the sector.
Thank you. Marie, obviously, if you want to say a few words, please go ahead. We've talked a lot about
I appreciate the shout out.
Good advertising.
Yes, thank you. Our founder, our CEO is actually going to be speaking at Legal Innovators, Charlotte Smith. So I'm really excited for everyone to hear about her on day one. But yeah, I agree with you, Timo, that like the way people stand out is bringing value to others. It's not trying to necessarily sell your product in the moment. It's thinking about what kind of free value are you going to give to people by being connected with you? Are you going to give them advice? Are you going to give them, you know, a great relationship? You can't necessarily stand out on your product alone. So you have to get creative with the value that you're bringing to people and the relationships you're building, and be thoughtful. So don't just try to extract value at the moment, right? Be thoughtful and think about long run relationships.
Absolutely. And I would, to Timo's first point, I would say I agree with him. It's, you know, don't approach it in a way that it's like superficial conversation. I'm going to talk to, 30 people at the conference. I think it's better to strike 5 meaningful conversations and interactions than, 50 shallow ones and superficial ones. And it's not really going to get you far. And I think always like approach a conversation in a way that, oh, what value can I extract from you, rather than also here's the value I can add. And if you engage in a conversation with that approach, I think it's a more balanced conversation and more insightful, rather than, oh, this person is here to get something from me. Like nobody wants to feel that way, right? So, and the other thing I would say as well, if you want to engage in a meaningful way, as Timo mentioned, like attend sessions, interact, ask questions, etc., what you could do is check out the website for these events. And there's a clear agenda. There are topics outlined. There's a description of topics, what the conversation is going to be about. So you can do a little bit of background research on that. You can see what you're interested in, what you're less interested in, what are the questions that you have, reading a short description of the discussion, the panel discussion. So you will be prepared in advance if you come up with anything on the spot. So there's a lot you can do in advance to sort of meaningfully engage in the conference. So thanks all of you for your contributions. And I want to go back to Marie now with something that we brought up and mentioned earlier. You've established yourself as a very regular participant at these events, right? I'm aware you recently went to Clog and She Breaks the Law. You're coming to Legal Innovators later at Legal Geek. Why these events typically last a day or two, right? Their impact usually extends beyond the time frame of the conference. And I know that you've been actively involved in organizing side events and before and after the main conference. And I think that's a very good way to approach it, to start meaningful conversations. So tell us a little more about that. How do you get that idea, why you're doing it, and what value are you getting from that?
That's a great question. It really, for me, the reason I started, I have WhatsApp channels that I do for every conference I go to, and I invite people to join ahead of time. And it gives us a chance to socialize before the event. I help connect people that I think are going to get along with each other. So it's a little bit more curated and trying to make sure that it's a controlled, safe group. So there's a couple reasons for me, right? I was very freaked out when I first started going to conferences. I had social anxiety. It was hard to get my footing, figure out how to build friendships, overwhelming for me for sure. And then just also as I got more intertwined in the communities, I realized, not everyone you meet at a conference is nice, and it takes some learning lessons to figure out where to go and who to talk to and how to set boundaries and navigate those waters. So that's why I've focused on my WhatsApp channels and my side events, because I want people to feel going into these days like they already have a safe zone. They already have people they can, if they go off and have separate conversations, great, but you always have like a home to go back to. You have your friends that you walked in with, you have people that'll walk you safely to your car at the end of the day. So that's really important for me. And I guess the value for me is close friendships too, but also like as an in-house person, I will say word of mouth is everything to us. We can go to 100 of these conferences and not necessarily, it might be a slow roll who we decide, like we might meet a bunch of vendors, but at the end of the day, we're going to go ask people that we already know. Did you use this vendor? Did you like them? Who would you, a lot of people come to me, what CLM would you buy? So that building those kind of relationships help me be able to answer those questions for people. And also I have a network of people now to go to when I want to say, I need a new law firm. Who should I talk to? So it is a lot of word of mouth, and it helps facilitate that.
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah, but a bit to that, Maria. I mean, there's no one size fits all when it comes to that. You are representing a very, very large enterprise with very specific needs. So you obviously, let's say, meet a bunch of CLM providers. There's so many of them. Yeah, go make your picks. And it's in fact that maybe one wasn't particularly effective for someone that has fairly different needs to you, but it could be effective for yourself. And I think that's kind of one of the crafts that it's hard to be a good buyer in a way, right? Procuring the right piece of equipment is I would say a very rare skill that it's usually possessed in some of those teams, because let's face it, legal tech, it's a new vertical. Maybe not in sectors like e-discovery, but everything else is less than a decade old. So I think that there is still a lot to be done to ensure that the right needs are matched with the right tools, and I think that we all should be part of that, especially when everyone will tell you that exactly what you need their product can do. Because those conversations are led by salespeople, and their job is to sell. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, and sometimes obviously it's a pity to see otherwise a good product being or trying to be utilized in the wrong environment.
I totally agree. I hate seeing vendors get all the blame when things go wrong. And one thing I appreciate that even at Legal Innovators is like we are starting to see more content around change management, because there's two parts to it, right? You have to go to these conferences to understand what's on the market, to build relationships with vendors, to become a good RFP, manager, to become a buyer, to know what you're doing. But then when you buy the tool, there's a whole separate skill set of how do you get people to believe in you? How do you get people to accept change? How do you get people to feel safe enough to try things and make mistakes, especially with lawyers, because we're not in an industry where making mistakes and looking imperfect is usually allowed. So there's I agree with you. It's very complicated. And I think the only way you learn those skills is through these conferences. Because it's not something you can't find a course on this necessarily. You can read a lot of books, but I think real FaceTime at conferences is how I've personally learned from the mistakes other people have made, so that I don't mess up my implementations.
Wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed the exchange, Timo and Marie. So thank you for that. If anyone else, Samriti, David, have anything to add to that, please feel free to. Otherwise, yeah,
I could just add that, I try to approach every one of these, every one of the talks, every one of the vendors, even in the exhibit booth, with a really sort of curiosity, and like an open mind. I might not be the target market for a particular type of vendor, or even the discussion might be something that I didn't think was necessarily relevant to me. But I think when you just immerse yourself in it and like and keep an open mind, you're sometimes a thought will occur to you, or maybe you can share something like, maybe the target market is in-house or a large firm, and I'll share from the perspective of a 20+ person law firm. And, that vendor may not have something for me that day, but maybe it'll give me an idea of a different type of vendor to search out. So that's the thing. Wherever you're coming from, like, be open and share kind of your perspective, but also be listening. Listen twice as much as you talk, maybe.
That's a good advice. Thanks, David. Yeah, and as Mari mentioned, not everyone's going to be nice, but it's certainly much appreciated to be curious, to ask questions, not with like ill intention, but to really understand the discussion and the product and what value that can have for you, and how you can also contribute, as David mentioned, like you can have someone in mind, that could be a good fit for the product they're offering, etc. So it's certainly very important to engage in that way. And also, since we've been discussing sort of like the value that extends beyond conferences and marketing and networking and all of that, I wanted to ask Samriti about social media and effective use of social media for these events. So based on your experience working with clients, how can we strategically integrate attending these conferences and sharing about them on social media platforms to enhance our visibility and to maximize our impact and to reach a wider audience beyond the people that we see at conferences? So what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to talk about like the thread that was happening before, I think these events are places where you find your tribe. I mean, that's what I go to these events for. Like you just meet like-minded people in your tribe, basically. And it's not about, and I think business is a result of that. So instead of having like a salesy approach, you would just be curious, like David said, and just go in there and get to know people. And when it comes to social media, I mean, I can go on about it because I mean, the reason my business exists is because of LinkedIn, right? Because I promoted my business. I spoke about the kind of services I provide. And surprisingly, it didn't start from LinkedIn. It started from Instagram, where I didn't even work in the legal niche. I started working with someone. I started working with a podcast, which was in the personal development space, right? So one thing led to the next. And I think the just before sharing how you can strategically use social media, I think, so if you want to win LinkedIn, you should be consistent with your content, as well as making conversations with other people on the platform, because it cannot be one-sided, it has to be two-sided. And the other thing that I see a lot of people getting into is the algorithm trap. The thing is, the algorithm keeps changing. So instead of creating content to please the algorithm, you should create content that would, again, show your personality. Because people like to do business with people, right? And when it comes to conferences, I think what I like to do is have like a 3-step plan. It can sound very meta, but like how Mary pointed out, how she creates these WhatsApp groups, right? So I call that pre-conference strategy, where you have, where you plan out your days. You don't have to be, you can be flexible, of course, and then you share these plans with the people that you meet in the WhatsApp groups, right? So then you can see what are the events that you're going together, who are the speakers that you're listening to together, and then you have a conversation about that. And then before you go to the conference, you can make a LinkedIn post about a previous conference you attended, where you learned a unique networking tip, right? And so there was this, so just to give you an example, there was this summit which took place in Dubai. It wasn't in the legal profession, it was the NAS summit. And there was this one person from India who went there. And so before going to the summit, he said that for 60 days before the summit, I'll create a video every single day before the summit. And then he was recognized at that summit. He was called on stage, and like his profile was vetted, and people gave him feedback on his content, right? So that was very interesting, because you just do something which no one would have put so much effort into thinking that. So that's like pre-conference strategy. When during the conference, you share behind the scenes in social media, you share pictures and videos and things like that. And when it comes to after the conference is over, what I usually I've spoken to a few people, and then they say that we don't know what to share after the conference, right? You can share the kind of things you learned, the people you met, and maybe share an interesting fact about the city the conference was in, right? So you just need to find a way to start a conversation. It doesn't have to start with business, and it doesn't have to end with business, right? It has to be who you are. So I think that's one of the ways that you can position yourself on social media when it comes to the entire conference. And from what I'm seeing, you can make 15 posts out of whatever I just said, right? So it's just about giving it a thought more than anyone else is sort of giving it, right? And I think you should do what makes you feel right? Just because someone else is doing something doesn't necessarily mean you should go do it, right? Because if you do what comes from the inside, that's who your personality is. So you don't have to fake it, and then you make like really good friends. So yeah.
And unless you have a horrible personality, and then in that way, just make sure that you just do what others.
Yeah.
You just share horrible things, and then you attract horrible people, I guess. But yes, I agree with you, Samruddhi. There's a lot you can share, and not necessarily for the sake of sharing something, but there's, if you found a conversation interesting, you can summarize the conversation in 5 points, and then a lot of people that couldn't join the conference or couldn't watch it online, they can find that valuable, a summary of key facts and findings and stuff like that. We have increasingly, our attention span is shrinking. So if someone summarizes something for me in 10 points, I would really appreciate that, especially if that's a conversation that I was interested in from the start. So I definitely agree. And before we wrap up the panel, I would like to give you the last chance to share maybe one quick networking tips that you might have for people watching the webinar, because all of us talked about networking and all of us talked about how important it is. But to be honest, as Marie mentioned earlier, walking into a room full of people and striking a meaningful conversation can be quite challenging. So if there is like an icebreaker or a networking tip that you have, please feel free to share with people watching us today. So we could maybe start from Timo on this.
If you are terrified of speaking to people, just know that everyone else around you is equally terrified. So a conversation always starts with a hey, and remain approachable, and don't fear approaching others. Don't be condescending to people, even though you feel that you are the most knowledgeable person in the room. And if you feel that you're the most knowledgeable person in the room, you probably are in the wrong room. But just be friendly, don't be a dick, and enjoy the day just as much as everyone else is there to enjoy it.
Anyone else? Marie, anything to share?
Yeah, I think for me, and especially like whether I'm asking people questions or they're asking me questions, I think people want authenticity and human connection. So try to avoid only talking business with people, immediately going up to them and saying, what do you do for a living? It does get tiring. So try to be a little bit more personable, find out a little bit more about them, make them feel like you're trying to build an authentic connection and not just getting straight to the point. And definitely second on Timo's rule. Don't be a dick.
That's a popular one.
I would
David?
just add that I think approaching somebody with genuinely interested in them and what's going on with them, like it's hard for somebody to, you know, to not want to speak to you if you're genuinely interested. And so you know, interested, friendly, open to a discussion. I think that's the way to approach it. And if you you know, if you are kind of nervous about it, you know, find somebody who maybe seems like they're nervous too, and just strike up a conversation with them.
Find someone who is equally nervous. Samriti, any additional thoughts before we wrap up?
Let's talk about how, you can go into the room and make an impression, right? But instead of trying to be interesting, you should be interested, like what David said, right? Just go into the room, be curious, have an open mind in terms of the people that you're talking to, right? You can start a conversation that doesn't have to be about business, right? And I think it's more about getting to know people. So just go in there and go as if you're going to make friends, right? And I think, like Timo pointed out, everyone's as much as afraid as you are. So I think going with the mindset of making friends in the industry, because what happens is when we're working in different companies, especially since I work as an individual consultant, you don't really have people. I mean, I don't see people at work that are coming into the office or go into an office, right? So it's for me, it's a great opportunity to make friends instead of just talking about business. So it gives me an opportunity to feel like I'm working in a company with so many more people, because I don't get to do that on a daily basis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marie, Timo, David, and Samriti, for a wonderful discussion. Maybe let's see if we have any questions from the audience for the Q&A. We have one from Sebastian Lutz. Can you tell us a bit more about opportunities to network with investors during the conference? How can we prepare in advance? Maybe Timo would be best in the best position to take this question.
So Sebastian, this is not an investment conference. Having said that, we do have a dozen or so registered investors. Some are individual investors, others are institutional investors. I mean, the best way to engage with an investor is to really tell them more about your story as opposed to the product that you've got. And most investors will back founders before they back products. And don't get me wrong, you still have to have a viable proposition, but I would myself always bet on an outstanding team with an average product than a great product with an average team. So try to, again, similar to what we've discussed, show them why you are special first before you point out why what you've got in mind or what you've built is special.
I certainly agree on that point. It's more important to tell your story than to start talking about your product, especially if you're an early stage company. Founders, who they are, and the team they've put together is so much more important for investors than anything you have built or you might be willing to build at that stage. So really, did you want to add something, or did I read you wrong?
I didn't want to add anything. I was actually there's another very interesting question, which is about how do you express genuine interest in someone without looking too needy? I think that's an interesting question. I'll be very happy to take it, but I want to also give the opportunity to the rest of the panelists, because my answer also might be a bit controversial.
Right. And then we have another question, which is, when it comes to legal tech marketing, what are the most common mistakes you see companies and individuals make? And I would probably direct this question to Samriti, and you're all welcome to contribute, of course. The most common mistakes.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that question. I think it's a very interesting question, because not a lot of people want to acknowledge mistakes. And I think when it comes to legal tech marketing, I've seen that a lot of people don't care to explain what they do, or like Timo said, say that story. So I think it's more about you sharing about what you do. Because when you look at, I always say this even in my posts, that when you look at, when you pull up like 5 different CLM company websites, you're probably not going to see how they stand out, right? Because they don't make an effort to stand out. And they might actually be doing very similar things, but the way you tell your story and the way you present what you do, and I think not a lot of people talk about what they do in detail. So I think that's one of the things that I see. And apart from that, the other mistake that I see is that they're too afraid to talk about their product on, again, social media. And a lot of times founders come to me and they're like, we want to market our product and we want like the most amount of revenue and the most amount of sales. But sometimes they forget to see that they might have a product problem and not a marketing problem. And I think it's very important that they realize that if they have a product problem, they cannot fix that with marketing, but they have to work on the product. So yeah.
Right. You can't fix everything with marketing, but it's certainly very important to engage early on. I don't think we have any more questions in the chat. In that case, I think we can wrap up the discussion. Thank you all so much for joining, especially to our panelists, Marie, David, Timo, and Samriti, for a very insightful conversation. I think everyone walked away feeling that they learned something new, and they learned a strategy to come to these conferences and optimize their time at these events. Yes, I hope to see some of you at upcoming conferences, Legal Innovators California or Legal Geek. If you intend to do so, please reach out, connect with us, and let's become friends so that we walk into a room full of people together. And we, as Marie said, and we have friends to rely on. And over the next couple of days, we'll be also emailing everyone who registered for this conference and who attended the conference to share discount codes to Legal Innovators California as well as Legal Geek North America. And you can also follow us on social media. You can scan the QR code that you will see on the screen shortly. But otherwise, have a great day, everyone, and hope to see you soon.
There is one question that Ritun Jai insists on being answered. How do you express genuine interest? Listen, like is the same thing as when you would like to show an interest in someone. Just don't make yourself too available. Like if you're always in their face, they're far less likely to pay attention to you. Go speak to people, but don't pester them, don't hound them. If they're interested and you follow up in a meaningful way, they will come back to you because they feel that what you've got to offer is relevant. If they don't come back to you or at all, not getting an answer is also an answer. So that's about it. Thank you, guys. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Let me add one more thing. I think I read the question to be asking if you appear interested, will that seem needy? And I don't think it'll seem needy if your interest is actually genuine and not just interested in how you can sell yourself or sell something to somebody else. Don't be, you will seem needy if you're just trying to sell somebody on working with you or buying your product or whatever. So that I just thought I'd add that to see if that was
Absolutely.
helpful.
I think we can wrap up the discussion by encouraging everyone to be genuine and authentic and approaching these conversations in the way they ask questions and engage with people. So thank you all very much once again for joining. And I look forward to meeting you in person sometime next month. Oh, this month actually, it's the 1st of June already. So, and as I mentioned, you can follow us on social media using the QR code. So thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.